In this video, you're going to learn about the purpose and role of a music director, also known as a band leader. This is different than the worship leader or worship pastor. I interviewed Shalon Palmer. He's the founder and CEO of worshiponline.com, and he shares a ton of practical advice on how to identify and develop a volunteer at your church to become your worship music director. So keep watching this video because you'll learn that no matter your church or worship ministry size, you can benefit from a worship music director. This video is brought to you by Lead Worship with Ableton, a free training to help you get started with the #1 worship leading software. With Ableton Live, you can run a click, backing tracks, and automate lyrics and lighting. It's the best tool for increasing excellence and eliminating distracting mistakes in worship. Click the link in the description to enroll in the free training today. My name is Jake Goslin. I'm the creator of Churchfront.com, an online resource for innovative and creative church leaders. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church. And also be sure to check out the show notes below this video for links to free trainings and free tools and resources for your worship ministry. My question of the day is, does your worship band have a music director? Let me know below in the comments. In the rest of this video, you're going to hear my conversation with Shalon Palmer about the purpose and role of a music director for a worship band. This is a long-form interview, so I've included quick navigation links below this video so you can skip to the parts you want to, or you could just watch the whole thing. I'm really excited for you to meet Shalon and to hear about his online resource, worshiponline.com. So without further ado, here's my interview with Shalon Palmer. Shalon Palmer, welcome to the Churchfront podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast and just share with folks. First, obviously, we're going to talk about this idea of a music director in worship and how folks can grow in that skill and possibly recruit a music director on their band. But also, I'm just really excited to connect you with the Churchfront community and connect them with Worship Online and the products and services that you guys are using or you have to really resource and support worship leaders around the world.
Yeah.
And man, you guys are just killing it. You know, I spent some time on your website this past week just getting to know it more, and I love it. I actually came across you guys for the first time a couple years ago. I was looking up a tutorial to play the song Say the Word, the electric guitar part, Say the Word by Hillsong. Because it's a really cool electric guitar part that intro that song starts off with, and I'm like, how in the world is this happening? I was searching tutorials on YouTube. You guys were the first one to come up. I'm like,
nice.
What's this website? And I think at the time, this was back in early 2015, so you guys were probably still a pretty young company back then. But since then, it's like you guys are like one of the arguably the premier resource for very detailed, high quality tutorials. So we'll talk more about that later in the podcast. Sure. But I just want the listeners to get to know you, get to know your story. So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us and tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, my name is Shalon Palmer. Like you said, I am currently the founder and CEO. I said currently like that's going to change anytime soon. It's not changing anytime soon, but of worshiponline.com. And yeah, I mean, I can just start wherever. We started Worship Online out of a need that I saw with the church. Really, there was nothing out there to really like give people who aren't necessarily looking for like a beginner style tutorial, people who just wanted to learn exactly how it is, you know, and because that's what I wanted. It was a need that I needed. I started, hey, I wish there was a cool library to you know, be able to come back to these songs, you know, every week or whatever, just as a refresher. And I wanted it to be, I was like, it'll just be a guitar site because I am a guitar player. But it eventually, over time, you know, I just got my hands dirty. I didn't know anything about video. I knew a little bit about audio. The only thing I really knew about was guitar and electric guitar. So I just jumped in, just an ordinary guy, jumped in, got my hands dirty, read every book I could get my hands on, and started listening to every podcast I could get my hands on. And then took some online courses, learned about video, audio, and just started just going one step at a time, and eventually hired my first employee after we came in and kind of started growing from the beginning, and then hired a bunch more employees, and now it is what it is today. So that's a very fast-tracked version of what it is.
Yeah, and maybe dive in a little bit more about your own personal journey of like what brought you, or when did you kind of get to a place as a worship leader to like care so much about making sure electric guitar part number 3 is exactly the right way, or you know what I mean? Just
for sure.
Just like caring about the musical aspects of worship.
Yeah, and that was me like growing up. Like I was definitely the guy when I first started playing guitar. I wanted to know it exactly how it is. I wanted to play it exactly like it was on the album, because I mean that's half the fun, is learning those parts. And I just knew like part of our vision here is and what I've seen as a worship leader growing up in church and volunteering and stuff is the leaders really are the kind of source for the church. Like when you can impact the leaders of the church, which is the worship leaders and the musicians and the guitarists and the even the guy running sound, like they're leaders whether they realize it or not. But whenever you can impact those leaders of the church, that's going to overflow to your congregation, and that's going to overflow to the church, and more people are going to experience Jesus. And that's been my passion forever, is to be able to reach, which I'm sure it's yours too, to reach worship leaders and musicians, just because those are the leaders of the church. And it's what I understand best, because growing up in the life of as a worship leader in church and stuff like that. So that's been our main vision, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's what we found, is the more you can impact the leaders, and whenever guitar 2 and 3 can learn their part stress-free, the worship leader is stress-free because the guitar player knows his part, and it's just overall a better experience for everyone. And that stress-free and free to worship environment overflows to the congregation, and more people experience Jesus because of it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the listeners to this podcast and folks who I interact with Churchfront, I get lots of like questions or comments on my content, or people email me. Like one of the primary challenges that we face as worship leaders, especially, and I'm talking about like the majority of us worship leaders, including myself, like we're at smaller churches. We don't have this huge collection of professional musician volunteers. And one of our biggest pain points is like, we listen to Hillsong and Elevation and Red Rocks and all those like bands out there, and we're like, oh, we want to like sound as excellent as they do. But we feel like we're such a long way from there. And I think, through the rest of this session, I want to help unpack folks some tips, especially regarding this idea of every worship band needs a music director, whether you're a huge band at like a multi-campus ministry and a huge worship ministry, or you are just the solo worship leader. Like, I think that one of the main takeaways I hope folks can pull from this is like, there just needs to be so much intentionality behind music and arrangements and such. In order that, like, number one, it is excellence, but like I find that the more prep and the better you do at that work, the easier it is for worship leaders especially to focus on worshiping and leading worship rather than making sure the drummer does the right fill at the right part of the song, right? Yeah. Because that's what it's so freeing to be able to have a prepared band who's ready to go. Everybody knows their parts, and you can really you can engage the congregation. You can just really just focusing on worship God. So that's kind of what I want to dive into with you, is this idea of what is a music director, and what does it look like even if you don't have someone else on your team who could be a music director for you, maybe as a worship leader? How do we get a worship leader in the right mindset of being a music director? So with that, can you go ahead and share some insight around this topic of like what is a music director?
Yeah. So whenever we first started gathering our thoughts about this music director thing, I have a lot of experience with churches, and I actually reached out to a lot of the guys that work for us who play for like Carrie Job and Lauren Daigle, and I asked them their thoughts too. So we kind of collaborated this and made this blog post about the band director, and they gave me a lot of great things that I didn't even think of. So it's definitely an informed from a bunch of different perspectives. So one of the things that we gathered, and what I think the most important thing that a band leader does is take the weight. And I know you mentioned that the worship leader also being the band director, but one of the most important things that a band director does, if he's not the worship leader, is take all of the weight off of the shoulders of the worship leader. So the worship leader can focus on worship and leading with excellence. And if he wants to share scripture, he can think about that and really get everything in order, because he's kind of that person leading the direction of the service. So the most important thing that a band director can do happens behind the scenes before the service ever even starts. He's texting musicians, he's scheduling rehearsals, he's making sure everyone is on the right page, knowing their parts. He does all that kind of stuff. If he's printing charts, whatever he's doing basically everything musically that the worship leader doesn't have to do it. So I think that's the most important thing there. So your services are just going to be all around better when the worship leader isn't worrying about who's playing what part while he's trying to lead a congregation and sing, because that's a very important thing to be doing. However, if you are the worship leader and you are also going to be the band leader, first I would encourage you to find someone who you can push that responsibility off to, and maybe not the entire responsibility. Maybe don't push all of it onto them at once. If there's one thing that they're good at, if like, hey, you can print the charts every week, or hey, you can just talk to our guitar players and make sure that they're coordinating correctly and everyone knows what key we're playing the song in. Just one little thing. If you don't have someone you can trust with all of those things, because you kind of, even like me as a business owner, with Worship Online, one of the hardest things for me to learn how to do was to let go of certain responsibilities. I have to do this. I'm the only one that can do this. I have to edit the video, and I have to be doing these. But there's the truth is, as the person who's overseeing the whole vision and direction of the company, there's things I shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't be, tweeting every couple hours or whatever. I shouldn't have to be responding to every customer service thing like that, because there's better things, not better things, but there's things that only I can do that I really should be focusing on. And it's the same thing with a worship leader. There's things that they need to be focusing on, and the more you add other things that they are going to be focusing on, it takes away from that main thing, which is leading the congregation and leading and facilitating worship. So start with giving one or two things away to somebody. Just, give someone something to do. Give someone something to do that's not you. And but if you are going to be the worship leader and you don't have anyone, the best thing that I think you can do to become a great band leader is broaden your horizons as far as different instruments go. Start having an understanding of, because there's so many worship leaders that maybe only know how to sing. And so that's very difficult to lead a band and give direction to a guitar player who's playing a specific lead line. Maybe you don't like it or something, or that's not what you want to happen. But if you don't have at least a decent understanding of some of the other instruments or how all of them work together, then it's really hard to give direction in those areas. So I definitely encourage a worship leader. The best way to lead your band is to have a really good understanding of the band. The better you are musically, too, the more they're going to follow you, because they respect your musical abilities, and then you can give more direction, and you can kind of influence what you feel like God is, the direction God's calling you to lead the service. You can influence it in that direction better and by explaining it to the band in a better way that they can understand. So that was a lot, but
that's great. I mean,
yeah.
You mentioned a lot of great stuff there. Maybe and I think there's a few different perspectives that we can look at this from. Again, there's some folks who may be listening who it's a larger church, they have a larger team of volunteers, and they maybe even have a volunteer who's an excellent musician on their team who they're like, oh yeah, that person could definitely be an amazing music director.
Yeah.
Just from my perspective, like, or sort of my situation, my home church right now is Red Rocks Church. That's where I, attend, serve, give, all that stuff. And then I'm interim worship leader around town here in Denver, a lot of other weekends. But at Red Rocks, they're a larger church. They got around 15,000 on a weekend, multiple campuses, huge worship ministry. And at our Littleton campus, that's where I serve, I'll be playing like bass or something like that in the band. And then there's one guy comes to mind as the music director for Red Rocks Worship. His name's John Hall, and he's an amazing keyboardist, and he's a great, amazing musician, and he's often the guy during our rehearsal. We have the worship leaders up front, and they're primarily are focusing on vocals, worship leading, engaging the congregation, and then John is kind of directing the guitarist, myself, and the drummer in the band, and giving us guidance there. And I think there's a lot of folks listening who maybe have, a John who's in their ministry who they could empower more and be like, hey, especially if that person has some music theory expertise, and some of these technical skills that a music director would need. But I wonder what it could look like too for in a smaller church setting. Well, actually, I mean, again, this is kind of talking from literally my own experience right now. I'm helping launch a worship ministry at a church plant, and we're starting off with a pretty light worship band as far as like we're going to have a drummer, vocalist, and acoustic guitar, which is myself, and then a keyboardist and vocalist, and who's like my worship assistant. And then we're using tracks and stuff to help kind of give a beefier sound. But I'm not like doing at least initially first, not doing a lot of like heavy recruiting on the front end, because I kind of want to like just get a really solid core to my band. But I have this worship assistant who could take some of those music director role, and I plan on doing that. But what would it look like? I guess what I'm asking you is, what would it look like for folks at smaller churches to like identify the right type of people who could do this? So like, what type of skills, attitude, character do these people need? And then also like, just like, what are some baby steps to get them going? You already kind of mentioned like prepping chord charts, but maybe what could maybe unpack that process a little more?
Well, one of the most important thing that they can have is a great attitude. You don't want someone who is maybe, because that attitude is if he's your leader, everyone, that attitude is going to be contagious. So someone that always has a great attitude, no matter what, like no matter what you're asking or saying, someone who always just has a great attitude, because they're going to lead, and they're ultimately going to, that's going to be the attitude of your team, because they're leading the team. That's the first big thing I would do. The next big thing that I think is super important is the ability to kind of be aware. And that was one of the things that I mentioned before whenever we talked about this, is kind of be aware of, and this is maybe a harder thing to maybe describe as I'm telling you, but someone who's aware of not only what they're playing, but what everyone else is playing as well. And so maybe that probably takes some musical skill to be able to do that. But I find that like people who produce music are really good at this, because they have an understanding. They're not only listening to the drum part, but they're listening how that guitar part or bass part sounds with that drum part. And just being overall aware, that person who not only is playing their instrument, but they're watching the leader at all times, and they're aware of the direction that the worship leader wants to go. And you can really kind of tell a lot by the body movement of the worship leader, just the way they're moving, if they want to go bigger into a song, or if they want to break down or something, whatever they're feeling, they just have that ability to be aware of what's going on. And that's something that could take a lot of, time maybe to learn. But I think that if you're intentional about it, like that's something you can train your team to do, like be just constantly tell them, be aware what I'm doing. If I'm jumping up and down, like tapping my foot, that means I want to go bigger. But if I'm kind of like breaking down, and like you happen to notice the pastor coming back up on stage because you are being aware, that's a time maybe to break down or something like that. I think that's a huge one. Preparedness. I think of those guys who always show up every week that are super prepared. Like they know the songs in and out, because you know who those guys are as a leader. There's some guys who usually kind of show up and wing it, but there's those guys who show up every week knowing their part, perfectly. And those are usually the guys that you can really trust to be a band leader, because they're going to, if I believe that how you do anything is how you do everything. So if they're prepared in that, I think they're going to be prepared as a band. They're going to do whatever it takes to be prepared as a band leader as well. For instance, they're really going to, if you say, hey, show up and I want you to be able to give direction to our other instruments as well, I think they'll probably spend 20 hours a week doing whatever it takes to make sure that they're prepared to show up. That's huge, being able to not only be prepared with your own parts, but have an understanding of what all the other instruments are doing as well. For instance, if there's a specific drum break or something happens and you're able to say, hey, actually your keys you cut out right here, this is a drum break, because and you're playing guitar, you happen to know that keys part cuts out there just because you were prepared and you kind of understand the song. So I think also having like some technical abilities is pretty important. That's a huge one, because, with dealing with sound and equipment, it's always, if something goes wrong, he needs to be that guy who can take a look at it and fix it so the worship leader doesn't have to stress out about it. If there's a buzz in someone's ears, obviously the sound guy, but since we're talking about smaller churches here, I think that's huge that a band leader has the ability to maybe troubleshoot some of those issues. If there's like a mic going out or if there's something happening, if he has to crawl up under the stage and plug something in, I think that's huge for a band leader to have. So, yeah, I think there was a second half of your question. What was the second half?
They're probably no. I mean, that really covered it.
Cool.
It was more like really just identifying like the type of people you're looking for. If you're trying to like recruit someone in your band to take care of these aspects, and you just kind of unpacked what that would look like. Good attitude, technical knowledge, preparedness. Like those are really important. Super important things. And maybe if someone, I'm just kind of like thinking off the top of my head here as far as like, if you feel like you have someone, especially who has like all of the attitude and that work ethic to be prepared, but maybe some of the technical stuff they're missing. It's like, well, I think if you looked online, there's probably great resources. Like I think a music director needs to have a good sense of like basic music theory. I bet you could probably find some good free YouTube tutorial videos, or maybe even some online schools around that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then also I know there's a ton of stuff around like sound techs and audio engineering and things like that, where you could help kind of really have a well-rounded person who knows these things. It's like,
and you can always take someone, if they just have they're really good at one of those things. Like if they just have a great attitude, all the other stuff can come with it. As long as you're willing to point them in the direction and say, hey, learn this. Here's the resources for this. Like you can train people to really do anything as long as they have a great attitude. That's the most important one for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to teach attitude and work ethic, but everything else is pretty doable. That's great. And then another question, like how do you, as a music director, help keep everybody on track, whether you're the music director or worship leader just trying to musically direct your band? How do you do that without being a micromanaging jerk face to people? And I'm talking about like during rehearsal, like how can you really care about excellence and help the band execute the worship music with excellence without like just coming across as a jerk?
I think that starts like mostly with what is the culture of your band currently. Because if you come in, if your band is so used to just winging it and doing whatever, and you just all of a sudden come in one day, hey, no, you play this and like you should have known this and blah, 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 you're going to come off as a huge jerk. Like, because the culture of your band is winging it maybe. But if the culture of your band is excellence, if you mentioning like, hey, this is, let's do this part this way or something, isn't going to be a big deal. They're probably going to look more at themselves afterwards and be like, dang, I should have known that or something, as opposed to, he's a jerk face. I can't believe he did that. So I think starting with the culture of what your band is, and that might have to be implemented slowly over time, becoming kind of being excellent. And it all starts with the leader. Again, like being excellent yourself is the first thing you want to do. Whether you're the worship leader, the band leader, you showing up prepared, knowing it, showing up early, on time, and then, because you can't ask them to do something that you're not doing yourself. So being that example. But Yeah, the culture of the band is the first thing that I would focus on. Take a hard look at what your church band culture is, and I've seen all kinds of different cultures. I've seen super like high intensity ones where it's like everything is perfect and everything starts down to this millisecond. We're doing this at this time, and like everybody knows their part perfectly. But I've also seen the church cultures that people just show up whenever, band slowly fades in throughout time, people are late, and then it's just like nobody kind of really knows and they're figuring it out as they go. So I mean, it depends. But if you want that excellent culture, I'd start with yourself first of all, and then as you're directing your band, do it as an encouraging way, not as, hey, you should have done this, but as a way, come at it as a servant. Like, I'm willing to help you do whatever. Let's grab coffee. Let's talk about what we can improve on. How can I help you serve? How can I do this? And I don't know if we'll get into this more, but one of the best things that I've seen so far is as for team leaders to show their team that they care about excellence is to resource them and get them resources. And I mean, Worship Online has been huge. I've seen some church team leaders that, because they care about their team, they're willing to invest into it, and you invest into what you love, and that the team members see that, like, oh, our worship leader really cares about this, he's investing in it. That just speaks so loudly that you care so much about this that you're willing to invest. And whether it's Worship Online or any resource, like Bethel has a great, like Worship U, like all these great resources, like anything that you're willing to invest in your team on.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about when the music director is trying to communicate with the band, maybe during rehearsal or during a service? How does that happen? Because I know it's one of the roles of a music director or band director is like leading the band in rehearsals in the service.
Yeah, I think it starts with like kind of making sure, getting everyone ready. Whether you're directing sound check, sometimes I've seen band leaders direct sound check. Starts with, hey, guitar 1, make sure no one else is playing. We need to check. Okay, guitar 2 or drums, check. The band leader's leading sound check, and then they go into rehearsal. Just start with, let's literally just start talking through everything. If you need to talk through it, say, hey, everyone, this song, make sure everyone knows that we're on the same page. Hey, this song is in this key. Are there any questions before we get started? If someone's like has a question, hopefully you're prepared enough to know the answer to that question. Or maybe you just kind of trust your musicians a lot of times, just, let them play their thing. And then after that, you just start rehearsing, go through the song, listen for anything that may be off, to start literally go through the set 1, 2, 3, 4, directing. And it's really important that you're listening for anything that stands out to you and answering any questions. So that's kind of how a good like rehearsal, usually the way I've seen rehearsals work a lot of times with a lot of, usually it's the larger churches I see do this, but maybe you could probably, some churches that could do this as well. Like they usually will do band rehearsal, just the band, while the vocalists are in a completely separate room going over vocal parts. And that gives the band time to work through parts. That way the worship, you have the worship leader vocalist sitting around the stage, twiddling his fingers, texting while the band is going through stuff. That's not a great use of everyone's time as if they're just doing that. So if they can be in a completely different room going over vocal parts while the band works through their parts. Or I've seen it where the band will show up a little earlier than the worship team. The band gets there 30 minutes, whatever, earlier, so they can talk through all the technicalities of music and stuff before the singers get there. And then at the very end, everyone will come together and maybe do one more run through with everyone where everyone's ready. So that's usually like how I've seen some great, I'm sure there's other formulas for that, but that's how I've personally seen great rehearsals work. But
yeah. What about some of the technical pieces of like just communicating on the fly throughout a worship set? Like how have you seen that done?
I think knowing the number system is huge. So knowing the number system, usually what you're most usually doing is watching the worship leader. If you're playing to tracks and like you know exactly how the song goes, there's usually not a lot that a band leader has to do. Like his job is usually, in that case, his job is beforehand and like rehearsals and stuff. But every once in a while, you might have to say something in a talk back mic. Sorry, I was assuming talkback mic this whole time. Assuming you have a talkback mic where you can hear it in your ears. But if you don't, it's not that hard. I mean, you can still, we throw up numbers on our fingers if you know the number system. If someone doesn't know a chord, or your worship leader decides they want to do something that wasn't planned and go into a different section of a song. And just, I think hand signals are huge. Usually those come from the worship leader, the other person singing, like repeat, go back into the chorus, something like that. But as a band leader, like maybe some like throwing up numbers on your fingers, knowing the number system, I think is huge to be able to play on the fly.
Yeah, and just to kind of unpack, in case if someone's not familiar with number systems, what do you mean by numbers?
Number systems, it's basically the chromatic scale, or a major scale. Sorry, it's a major scale of a song. So, oh god, I don't know how I can explain it without getting into so much theory.
Well, so you're just saying, so like at one is the one chord of the key, and so the key of G, so the key of G, which is the key of worship. So it'd be one is the key.
The key of worship.
G. Yeah.
G is the key of worship. Yeah, that's great.
It totally is, man. And then, okay, then if someone put up a 4, it would be like this. That's a C, right? Because C is the 4 chord in the key of G.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I kind of think of it as shapes, and we actually have a whole like lesson, a free lesson on YouTube for number system. If anyone wants to learn the number system, just Google or Worship Online number system. We talk about it. But yeah, it's something that like any notable band is using. Like, it's just so common now in worship music that like you don't really have any excuse to not know it. It's just, it makes everything so easy. It makes transposing so easy. If you decide you want to do it in a different key, it's all still the exact same numbers, just, so, but yeah, I think as a band leader, if you're going to lead and throw out chords to band meetings, it's much harder to yell out G to your band if everyone needs to go to a certain chord, because what is that, D, C, E, B? I don't know what you're saying. But if you can just hold up a 4 or a 1 on your finger, it just makes it so much easier to be able to kind of transition through chords.
Yeah, that's great. And then to unpack for folks too, for technical setup of like a talkback mic, pretty simple, right? You just have a microphone on the stage for whoever your music director is. Like I mentioned earlier, our guy at the Red Rocks, John, like he has a mic, and you mute the mic through the house system, so it's not going out to the house speakers, and then you have it just going into the in-ear monitoring, which, this kind of only works if you have in-ears set up, because you don't need his voice coming through wedges or something like that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to unpack that a little bit for folks as well. So, okay, dude, we've covered so much great stuff about, just getting going with a music director in your band, what his or her role would look like. Let's start to unpack though, because one of the important things that a musical director is doing, or band leader, whatever you want to call them, they are really helping resource the band, helping people know what parts they need to be playing, when they need to be playing those parts, and especially for worship leaders in a little bit smaller ministry context, if you are the music director too, because again, this is kind of the thing. I think most folks listening to this probably do not have a separate music director in their band. So if, as me as a solo worship leader, but I really care about musical excellence, I need to make sure I resource them with the best materials possible. And you already mentioned, like, Worship Online provides so many great resources. So, but I want you to unpack for folks who haven't heard of Worship Online yet, what it is that you guys provide for worship leaders.
If you're looking for a 24/7, 365 days a year band leader, that will be way cheaper than any person you've ever hired in your life. Worship Online would probably be that source. Yeah.
That sounds too good. That sounds way too good to be true.
I know. That's funny because I like that. Those aren't even like my words. I actually had a couple people like email in before and say like, Worship Online is the cheapest band director I've ever hired for my team. Like, band director, this is amazing. So
tell us about it. Why? How is it like the best, cheapest virtual band director available?
So we teach the songs. Like, the idea with Worship Online is we have every instrument, a tutorial for every instrument on over 300 songs. So they're all the most like popular worship songs right now, and some like Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation, all that kind of stuff like that. And so every instrument, and vocal tutorials as well. So we break down the vocal parts. We teach the alto, the tenor, all the harmony parts for the song. And so the idea, the concept with Worship Online, and what makes it different than something else that you may find just on YouTube or something is that we're teaching the songs exactly as they're played on the albums. So we're not kind of playing our own interpretations. We're not baby stepping it or playing kind of like combining parts to make it sound one way or anything like that. We just literally, that's simple. We teach it exactly as it's played on the album. We go through all the stem tracks of the song. So we listen through and we're able to isolate all the electric guitar part, for instance, and hear exactly what's being played. That way we can play, because those parts are usually, if you're trying to play that song just by listening to the MP3 or the song, like it's going to be a huge guess. Like those parts are buried in a mix, like they're just in there and you can't really hear exactly what's going on. So we teach the parts exactly like they are on the album. And so it actually makes it way more fun. So even I use Worship Online when I play a set. I go as a reference to like, oh yeah, that's way more fun. That's such a cool, you're discovering all these like really cool parts that maybe, with having to listen to it, like your ear can't decipher exactly what's being played, but it really adds a ton to a mix of the song, and it makes it way more fun too. So all the music, all the parts of the song, drums, keyboards, we do an aux keys and a main keys part, which would be if you're the only keyboard player, these are the parts you play. But an aux keys part, if you have a second keyboard player, if you just want to add one for fun, typically stuff you would find like in a loop or like a track section of a song, that if you're not running tracks, you could add a second, you don't need tracks. You could just add that second keyboard part. And we also sell all the patches to the songs for Omnisphere and Mainstage for keyboard players, so they can get all those like synth sounds and crazy whatevers. I'm not a keys player. I wish I could describe that better, but yeah, I mean, that's really the gist of it. Like, so all your musicians can learn their parts exactly as they're played on the album. We have some really talented dudes teaching these parts, so they're crazy accurate. Like Austin Davis, he plays full time with Kerry Job. He does all of our drum tutorials. He's the best worship drummer I know and that I've seen, probably. He's up there, definitely. And then some of our guitar players, like Jordan plays for Kerry Job, Max plays for Lauren Daigle, and stuff like that. And so our vocalists are just session vocalists that can rip. And so they're teaching the parts.
Can you
really
tell?
great.
That was one of the questions I had for you, because when I'm looking on Worship Online, there's just like the talent that is there providing these tutorials. It just blows me away. Like, tell us about your team. Like, you already mentioned some of these. So a lot of them you said these are musicians who are playing with kind of like the top notch professional worship artists. But unpack like your vocalists. Like, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're incredible. And so we found the way I found my first vocalist, Anna, was whenever we decided we wanted to do vocal tutorials. There was really no other option for me because she's my fiance. So
okay.
There was no other option. Yeah. But she is the best vocalist I have ever heard in person, like live vocalist. So I was like, there's really no choice, which I got really lucky getting her, because she is my fiance and she's just incredible. She just did a feature on Tasha Cobb's album and like is doing some touring with and she's done stuff at like the Deeper Israel Houghton conference and stuff. So she's incredible. So she was our first female vocalist. So we got really lucky there getting her. And then we decided we wanted to get a guy, and I literally put out, like, I live in Nashville, so there's lots of talent to choose from, and I put out only time I've ever done this, actually. Every person I've hired was like friends, word of mouth kind of thing, but I actually put out a what do you call it, like a job description that I was hiring on this Nashville entertainment whatever Facebook page, and it had a ton of people apply for it, and we went through and had them put in submissions, and it was kind of a long process. Like, we made sure we wanted to pick the right person, and mostly wanted to make sure that person had a great heart and loved worship music and really just had a work ethic, because we had to knock out like 10 songs a day for like however many months. It was insane. Like, that was a lot of work to on them and stress vocally to be able to do that many songs that fast to release vocals. But yeah, we found Thomas Daniel, who's incredible. He's a session vocalist here in Nashville and leads worship. He was like their like worship director at ORU for a long time, and graduated from there. And yeah, he's incredible. So, and then we have another ORU alum, which is Libby, who Anna. We have 2 girl vocalists now, Anna and Libby, and they're both just incredible. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, that was a long story for just vocalists, but yeah.
No, it's cool. It's cool to know these people. You know, you see them in tutorial videos all the time. Like I see them on your Facebook page, and it's like these are like not machine singers; they're real people. I mean, they may feel like machines putting out as much worship recordings as they do sometimes, but tell them, let them know that I'm appreciative of what they're doing. Obviously, what Worship Online in general is doing. And I think they're just helping so many people because just the simple things of breaking down harmonies and stuff like that. Man, that's so helpful.
Yeah, we have a free 5-part video series for worship vocalists that Anna and Thomas teach together, and they show it. You get to know them a lot. They show their personality a lot in those videos. It's completely free. If you Google 5-part worship online vocals or something like that, you can probably find it. But it's just they go through different harmony things. So yeah, they can nail a harmony better than like anyone I know. And so most of the time we teach the parts exactly like they are in the album. So if there's just an alto part, we'll just sing an alto part. But a lot of times we will add a third part, even if it's not there in the album, as long as it doesn't take away from the feel of the song. You don't want the song to sound like Kids Bop. Which is kind of another tip is like a lot of worship teams just think, oh, you sing all in the entire time, everyone's singing a harmony, which isn't the case. There's so many levels with vocals and being intentional about what you're doing, like waiting till the big chorus to come in with the harmony and stacking melody for some parts of the song. Like vocals can really like get intense when you really want to do it right, like, and they would be able to build in those levels exactly how you want them. There's parts that you're sitting out of the song, and like, so it's not just understanding or learning the actual harmony part. It's learning, oh, this is how we're stacking our vocals. We actually sit out that first chorus because we want that chorus to be down. Then we come in with melody on the verse. We just stack the melody because we want this kind of feel. And then we don't actually come in with the harmony until this chorus because this is the part we want to be huge for the song. So yeah, but we will add harmonies as long as it doesn't take away from the song, just to give worship bands that extra option. Like if there's not a tenor part, we'll add a tenor part just for the sake of it. And having great vocalists, that was a big deal because they're having to write their own tenor parts and come up with all their own harmonies and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's super, super helpful. So I want to like, even if folks are just listening to this, I kind of want to walk them through real quick what this feels like or what it looks like when you log in. Because like, okay, I'm at the main page of worshiponline.com once I signed up for my free trial. And so I'm here and like I see a list of songs. There's a search box. I could search whatever song I want. I'm just scrolling down. Okay, so the song So Will I 100 Billion Times by Hillsong United. I click on that. And then bam, lands me on a page. I see a video with the 2 electric guitar parts, and it's cool. The video, I love how you did these videos, and I can appreciate as someone who makes videos a lot. Like you put a lot of stinking work into this stuff. Like as far as setting them up with a nice clean background, great lighting. You can see them what the guitarists are playing stacked on top of each other, so you can see what they're playing at the same time. Looks like you use Wistia for your video host, and which is like a super powerful way of hosting videos. You can even speed them up or slow them down if you want. And then underneath that, I see different instruments I can select. Like, okay, I want to learn the keys. Okay, there's a keys main tutorial video. Then there's a keys main lesson. And then it looks like your keyboard instructor is like talking about not just showing how to play, but actually gives you lessons. That's awesome.
He talks about the tones and how he got the sounds and all that kind of stuff. And then he talks about the actual playing through the parts and breaks it down slow for you and stuff.
That's awesome. So it's not only just a straight up tutorial video, but you're also getting like one-on-one lessons on like how to play these. That's sweet. And then same thing with like drums lessons. And I know it probably varies song to song depending on how technical the parts are. But basically, if there's a really hard, if you ever hear a worship song that's popular and it has a really like sounds like a technical part, you guys have all those resources there behind it. And then the chords are right here as well. So as I'm playing along, watching the video, I can also have the chord chart right here, play along, and the tabulature for it too, for the different guitar parts. So it's like I'm just getting exhausted knowing how much time you guys probably had to put into this. And it's great because it's like it's not like ultimate guitar tabs. I hope this is right, but it's like this is right. Like it's
and you can if you don't think if you're not sure, you can just watch us play through it, and if it sounds right, it looks right. You know what I mean? So there's videos watching us play through it. Yeah,
and it looks like you can create set lists in here of different songs you're working on. Get the keys patches for them as well. You guys, like, this is way better than any other music director. Obviously, Worship Online can't be there with you on the stage during rehearsal, but as far as the preparation process that a music director is responsible for, I love the tools that you guys get going here. So let's see here. I guess at this point, what do folks do? You know, if they like what they're hearing about Worship Online, what's the next step to take after this, listening to this podcast?
Go to worshiponline.com. You can start a free trial. So first 14 days are completely free. If for some reason you think it's not for you, although I'm super confident that you'll love it either way, but you can start a free 14-day trial. No risk, no contracts, nothing. If you in 14 days, completely free, and just give it a try.
Yeah, and explain also the options for depending on like what size team you have.
How
that works.
So you can, you can sign up as an individual, as a solo member, but we find you get the most power and use out of Worship Online when you're using it as a team, as opposed to just one person showing up prepared. You want the entire team on the same page, learning the same version of the song. So we offer team accounts. So a team account, just depending on the size of your team, is going to be which subscription plan you sign up for. So once you get signed up, your team leader, whoever is going to be leading, adminning the account, would just need to sign up for an account. And with that account, depending on how many team members you sign up for, you can send, you get this many invites to send out. So you send an invite out and say you want to add John Doe to your team, and you can even have the option if you want to select what instrument they play, so you can have all your team members organized in your account on your team page. If you ever want to group them, you can create groups. Like if you have multiple campuses, this is campus A, this is campus B, add them to different groups so everyone can be organized. But if you just have one campus, you can just input them, and it'll send an email out to John Doe that he just got an invite to Worship Online, and then that uses up one of your invites, and you have just as many as you signed up for, and everyone gets access to the site that you need.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, super simple to get started. I love how you guys give it so everybody has their own, team members can have their own individual accounts with that. And it's affordable. I mean, it's way more affordable than what it would be like to, again, hire someone part-time to do all this stuff. And again, when you're hiring one person, they can't replicate themselves and be sitting with you or guitarist teaching them how to play the guitar part, or the keyboardist or the drummer. So that's I feel like we live in the best time in history, you know, like to be able to, and I've experienced this just with Churchfront, and be able to create tutorial videos that then helps thousands of worship leaders figure out how to do the most like technical or thing and word, like when it comes to, like, for example, how to run Pro Presenter from Ableton Live. Like I made that video, and now it's helping people all the time. And that's the same idea as with virtual platforms. We can just continue to train and develop other people. And you guys, I would say, are doing so much in the area of resourcing worship leaders and helping them become better music directors. So one more plug I want to put in for you, Shalon, is you guys, I understand, just started a podcast.
We did. Launched today, actually.
Yeah,
we've been working on it for a few months, batch recording the episodes and stuff, but launched today, finally.
Yeah, that's exciting. And so I think folks probably can just search it on. I saw you have it in a couple formats, right? So you have an audio format. Is that going to be on all the major podcast platforms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the audio format. And then we also have the video format if you want to just watch our facial expressions as we say dumb things. Not really, but you can see our facial expressions, and that'll be on YouTube too. So.
Yeah, great. So if you're listening to this, first step, go to worshiponline.com. Just sign up for that free trial. Just poke around. You're not committed to anything at that point. And then just see if it's for you. I think when you're in there, like I was in there again just today again, and I was like looking at the tutorials, and then it sounds so good. The quality of the tutorials are so good. Like I was having a little like worship moment over here. Like
believe it or not, those are all of our own tracks. We don't use any of the actual artist tracks. Those are all like our in-house created tracks. We take our drum tutorial tracks, then our keys and our vocals and our guitars, and we put them all together, and that's how we mix all of our tutorials with just our tracks.
Well, and you kind of have to if you're really going to make the best tutorials to teach each of these parts, because like with the master tracks from these publishers or whatever, I don't think it would do the job as well. So like when I'm listening to the electric guitar part especially, I love seeing it, and then you guys boost the audio so I can hear it really well. Same for like something like bass guitar. Like you usually can't hear bass that well. So that's works super well. So Shalon, thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you.
And just keep up the great work. You guys are helping so many people
thank you so much.
Further their worship ministries, and in the end really further the kingdom.
Yeah, thank you. Same for you too. This is awesome, man. I'm super thankful to be here, man. I'm seriously honored.
I hope you enjoyed that interview and you have a bunch of practical takeaways you can begin implementing in your worship ministry today. It doesn't matter what size your church is, you can get started now with developing out this role of a music director. Maybe it just starts with delegating a little bit to a volunteer on your team who has potential to grow into this role. And I also hope this video kind of opened your eyes to the music director role that we all have as worship leaders. Make sure you go to worshiponline.com to sign up for that 14-day free trial. You're going to love the user interface and all the resources that website has for you and your team. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and share it with your friends in worship ministry. You can check out some related videos right over here, and don't forget to subscribe to the Churchfront channel so you can continue to receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church.